Really at a turning point in financial history. Every decade, it seems like the way that money moves across the world, it gets re-engineered, it gets restructured, and right now we're watching that transformation happen again in real time. And for many years, and even today, guys, I see it, people are thinking about blockchain as if it's just for trading or it's just for speculation. But what's quietly unfolding behind the curtains, if you open the doors and you take a look at what's really going on with the Bank of International Settlements, the Bank of England, the Bretton Woods Committee, the International Monetary Fund, shows us that this technology is much different than just speculative trading, hype, and meme coins. Okay? This panel right here is the foundation for the new financial infrastructure. Now, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that my goal isn't to hype up tokens or to chase headlines. It's really to connect the dots, to pick up the breadcrumbs. All right. I want to show you guys what I see from the Bank of International Settlements Innovation Hub, which is exactly what this is. And central bank projects, right? We're going to go into Project Agorá. We're going to go into the BIS's Project Nexus. We're going to go into the BIS's Project Enbridge, as well as Project Meridian. And I'm going to connect the dots from my own perspective as to why these projects are kind of so similar to what Ripple and a couple other utility-based blockchains have been building for years and years and years. Okay, we are picking up the breadcrumbs, we're looking at the technical overlaps, the partnerships, the standards, and we're proving that the system is already set into motion.
Do you know how I feel to get bullied? Do you understand how I feel to get bullied? Do you understand? There's people out here in this world really getting bullied. Are you okay? I want y'all to apologize right now. Apologize right now or get out of my classroom. You shouldn't have worn that hat. Apologize right now. Get the fuck out of my classroom.
My sleeves. You want to call me out? Sit down and shut the fuck up, bitch. Avada Kedavra.
I am sick of this shit. Fuck Wall Street. Fuck you all.
So when we go through this breakdown, I want you guys to think of it like you had the opportunity to open the door and to see what these people that are so deeply tied into traditional finance are talking about. They're explaining how they're building the future of finance. Okay? And they're going to use terms like unified ledger, atomic settlement, and tokenized deposits. But what they're really describing is the fundamentals of what Ripple has been testing with central banks for years and years. Okay? We call this Bully's Breadcrumbs because we're following the trail of breadcrumbs. The verified documents, the BIS reports, the proof of concepts, right? All of this ties to the face that institutional adoption is coming. And it's not even just coming, that it is here. They've been working on this for many, many years. All right? We are showing you guys that the crypto conversation is changing away from speculative and it's coming into real finance. And these people are at the center of the stage. Like I said, if you guys have been watching me for a while, you know that I talk about how tokenization, standards, and interoperability are all coming together. Okay, but what's really important to understand is that we're not in the idea phase. We're not speculating about this anymore. We are in the testing phase. The systems are being connected. The banks are experimenting, and central banks are building these digital currencies to have a shared ledger. All right, so in tonight's episode, we're going to break down all of this. We're going to go step by step. We're going to look at the Bank of England's ISO 222 upgrade, to the Bretton Woods strategy, to China's Enbridge, okay? And then we're going to go back into the BIS's unified ledger. And along the way, I'm going to show you how Ripple, through the interledger protocol, on-demand liquidity, all of it, and their partnerships, kind of already fits into the exact model that the global financial system is adopting today, all right? The point of this isn't to say that Ripple owns the system or Ripple is the system. It's to show you how Ripple's design kind of became the system. Okay, and once you see the language that these institutions use, you're going to realize that they've just rephrased what Ripple and the Interledger Protocol have been doing since 2017. I'm going to show you guys that Ripple's not just chasing adoption, it's quietly sitting in the center of it. So that's what this episode is really all about. We're going to be connecting the dots between what we already know and what's finally being confirmed on a global stage. So let's start with it.
So we begin with some cross-border perspectives on cross-border payments. And providing those perspectives are, in no particular order, Timothy D. Adams, President and CEO of the Institute of International Finance, Victoria Cleland, Chief Cashier and Executive Director for Payments at the Bank of England, Stefan Ingves, former Governor of the Sveriges Riksbank and current member of the Bretton Woods Committee, and Yuen Loa, Director of the Innovation Division of the Digital Currency Institute of the People's Bank of China. Moderating their discussion is Professor Rod Garrett. Professor Garrett is a professor of economics at the University of California, Santa Barbara. He is also a thoroughly international central banker. He's worked as a senior advisor at the BIS, a research advisor to the Bank of England, and is a former vice president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and held visiting scholar positions at the Bank of Canada and the IMF. Rod, it's wonderful to see you on a panel. Over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to host this panel with this distinguished list of panelists that has experience that spans a long periods of time and many different geographical regions. So it's my great pleasure to be here. So this session is on cross-border payments, and there's been considerable interest in this topic, particularly on the public sector side. Since the G20 report that was written by the FSB and CPMI back in 2020 highlighted this issue. And now at the time, there was a lot of interest in cross-border payments because cross-border payments were becoming increasingly difficult as the costs and the risks associated with liabilities from AML and sanctions violations had dramatically increased since the financial crisis. And as a consequence, there was a great reduction in the number of correspondents and in the number of correspondent banking chains. And so despite the fact that payment values were increasing globally, we were seeing increased costs and in some cases a complete withdrawal of the provision of correspondent banking services. So the G20 report outlined what was called a global roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments. And this included 19 building blocks. So anyone who's been working in central banks for the last 5 years knows that whenever you do research on this topic, you have to identify which building blocks you're addressing. And the goal was to improve, as people have mentioned several times, to improve reduce cost, improve speed or efficiency, reduce risk, and improve access with a goal of doing all this by 2027. Now, the FSB has carefully monitored the progress since the publication of the roadmap, and this panel will talk a little bit about it, but just let me say just a few words. So there was a progress report that was issued by the FSB in 2024, and they identified that there had been significant improvement in several areas, particularly with regards to cross-border data management and messaging standards, but that we weren't at the point of achieving all of the goals. In particular, a couple of areas, if we looked at retail payments, there was really no evidence of significant improvement. And in some cases, some categories of payments, there are even increases in costs if we look at sort of the case of remittances. So not only are we not getting close to the 1% target, we may even be moving away from it. So this is why this issue is still such an important issue, and why we're talking about it today. And so fortunately, we have several people on this panel that are going to address this issue, and we're going to do it in a way with 2 rounds of questions. And so the first...
Okay, so this is our first fundamental key breakdown, and the BIS is coming out with it right away. They're saying that cross-border payments they're still broken. After 5 years, when taking a look at the G20's roadmap, the system hasn't reached its targets yet. It still takes days to move money, and the fees eat away at smaller transactions, like he was saying, like the remittances is still one of the most expensive ones out there. And, well, why is this? Well, it's because all of the banks still rely on the corresponding chains, right? The layers of institutions have to pass the messages back and forth, and they have to reconcile the balances between each other. And a lot of the times when these ledgers don't match up, that's still why you get a couple T+1, T+2 days for your transactions to settle. So each one of those, it still adds cost, time, and risk. That's essentially what they wanted to target, was the cost, time, and risk. So when the BIS and the International Monetary Fund and the FSB says that the progress on cross-border payments has not been enough, what they're really saying is that the world's banking infrastructure, it still can't scale to the digital era yet, unless it's built on shared programmable ledgers instead of siloed databases that we currently have now. That's why there's a push for new frameworks. We go into Project Nexus, which is essentially connecting real-time payment systems. We go into the BIS's Project Agorá, which is building this unified ledger for tokenization, right? All of this, it's already happening right now. So if we go over, okay, just so you guys can read this, I want you guys to be able to take a look with me. We go over to the Financial Stability Board, okay? This is the G20 roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments, and this was in 2024. They say, while good progress contains in completing the roadmap's priority actions, it will take time for some of the priority actions to translate into tangible outcomes. So this was a report made by the FSB with the Bank of International Settlements Committee on Payment Market Infrastructure, the CPMI group. Okay, and they want to strengthen the cross-border payments. Now, they said that while more than half of the priority actions have been completed, the KPI report suggests that the work done so far is not yet sufficient, and that further efforts are needed to meet the quantitative targets for the cross-border payments. So what they're saying is that we're still not close. This is coming from the Financial Stability Board, which reports to the G20 and the BIS. And they're saying that these pilot projects and the upgrades, they still haven't delivered to the efficiency and scalability that they want. And this leaves a huge gap open for technologies that can come in and solve these pain points. Okay, they can synchronize with these ledgers instantly without 1,000 intermediaries checking each other's banking books and ledgers. So this is going to be the setup for everything else that we're going to talk about tonight. When the FSB says not sufficient enough, that's our signal that they're looking for the solution that can actually close the gap and solve that friction point. Now, think about what platforms already solve these problems for cross-border payments. XRP and XLM already handle cross-border payments, and they move value instantly and very cheaply and very quickly. XDC tackles trade finance, where the settlement and documentation verification has already been slowing things down. XDC is eases the friction point for a lot of these pain points. HBAR, right? We have enterprise-grade security to networks like the Hyperledger Fabric. So much espresso. Quant's Overledger, right, is basically the middleware that's connecting all these different APIs together into one interoperable layer. So while the FSB is publicly saying that we still haven't figured it out, we still haven't hit the targets, the distributed ledger systems that we've been talking about are proving that those inefficiencies in the background are solved. And that's why I say utility crypto isn't competing with the banks. It's positioning itself to fix what the banks can't fix on their own.
Talk about the work that you've done in that regard, that the Bank of England has done, and how this translates to cross-border payments.
It sounds like a conference in its own right, actually. I'll try and take it as three parts. First of all, what the roadmap's been trying to achieve, a little bit about what we've done in the UK in terms of transforming our own RTGS system, but with an eye to cross-border, and then a bit about global progress. And I think the most important thing to say about the roadmap is it is there to support everyone, in particular end users. And I think that's why it's so important. It was important at the time, it's even more important now. So we need to really keep pushing ahead. There are almost two elements to those building blocks. One was enhancing the current system. Another one was the more sort of future-looking, interlinking, multilateral payment systems and bigger use of technology. But I think it's really important that we don't think, well, enhancing the existing system that's old hat, and here today we're doing innovation. The two need to go hand in hand. Quite a lot of what we're doing in terms of enhancing the current correspondent banking model needs things such as ISO that are actually really important for those more future-looking things around interlinking, and also technology. Some of the ideas we've been hearing about today in AI, they can really be helpful in enhancing the the correspondent banking model. So we shouldn't think old and new. It's how we can bring all of this together. As you mentioned, in the UK, we've been enhancing our real-time gross settlement system, so a big transformational programme which started off, we need to improve the resilience of our system, and then it's actually, if we're going to do open heart surgery on RTGS, let's think what more we can do. So we had ambitions around competition and innovation, and in April this year, the new system went live, and it is still live, still kicking. It will have settled billions and billions of pounds while we've been sitting here this afternoon. So I think what's great about that is it's something that is there, and we've been innovating, and it is now live. And resilience was key. Some of the things we were doing, and it was not what do we need. It wasn't what do we need domestically today. It's what do we need to do domestically and cross-border, and what might we want to do tomorrow. So thinking about sort of capability and capacity, we've built in the capacity for many, many multiples of the current number of participants. That's important because we think about who do we want to access our system. The number of different types of people who join the system can really help access. It can help cross-border payments. We're the first G7 central bank to enable non-bank payment service providers to join. The new system is increasing capacity for that. It is making it easier to onboard. But that technological change has also been complemented by policy change. So we'd actually changed our policy to enable us to do that. We've introduced ISO 20022 messaging. That interoperability that delivers is absolutely key to enhancing cross-border payment. The new system has the ability to open near 24/7. When you're talking about cross-border payments, you need to be open when other RTGS systems are open. We think that is absolutely key, and we're also thinking ahead around something called synchronization. So we're sort of tokenizing using our current RTGS ledger, having a synchronization operator who can then link, for example, to a real estate ledger in the UK. We've been doing some great work, Francesca and her team, BIS Innovation Hub London, on Project Meridian. We've taken that a step further with Project Meridian FX, so sort of linking our ledger to others. But again, it was building the system. What more do we want it to do? And thinking cross-border from the start. More generally, in terms of the global targets, as you say, we haven't met them yet.
Try to remember back to what she said. She said they're introducing ISO 222 for 24/7 settlement trading. And they're thinking about something they're calling synchronization, which is linking their RTGS ledgers to all the other ones. And then she references Project Meridian FX. So the Bank of England, okay, she's from the Bank of England. They just upgraded the engine that runs the UK payments. Okay, this is what RTGS is. It's the real-time gross settlements. And before that, every country's RTGS used its own private format, and now they're all switching to ISO 222, which is basically the brand new world's payment networks that all speak one digital language. So synchronization is another key word that she said that matters, and we're going to jump into the PDS for this as well. And it basically just means that they're connecting two ledgers. So, for example, the Bank of England's RTGS's payments and another country's, they can update it at exactly the same time. And that's what the Bank of International Settlement is calling atomic settlement. So instead of sending money and waiting and checking and confirming that everything clears, that everything was there, everything starts to clear instantly in one synchronized motion. And it's basically the traditional world starting to act like a blockchain. So we're going to go into the Bank of England's ISO 222, implementing the global payment messages standards with CHAPS and RTGS. So ISO 222, the new messaging standard for CHAPS and RTGS. On June 19th, 2023, CHAPS and the bank's real-time gross settlement systems migrated to the ISO 222 standard. We're going to jump over into the BIS's Project Meridian. Maybe too much. It says Project Meridian to test and validate the technologies enabling the atomic settlement of FX transactions across ledgers based in different jurisdictions and built on different technologies. It expands the scope of synchronization from RTGS systems that include faster payments and distributed ledger technologies. So again, the key highlights, right, is synchronization, which is moving different types of currencies, as well as the atomic settlement. Now, how are we going to connect this into Ripple? Well, this is essentially what Ripple's plan has been, okay? First, the Bank of International Settlements upgrades to ISO 222. And then Project Meridian from the BIS adds synchronization and atomic settlement, okay? The Bank of England's earlier proof of concept with Ripple in 2017 proves that the very same synchronized RTGS systems can run on Ripple's interledger protocol. And I'm going to take a look at this right here. This is the Bank of England's proof of concept with Ripple, okay, exploring the synchronized settlements of payments using the interledger protocol. The Bank of England's FinTech Accelerator works with innovation firms and new technologies. In this proof of concept, we wanted to explore the synchronized movement of two different currencies in two different simulated real-time gross settlement systems utilizing the interledger protocol. The bank has also recently stated that the program of work to replace the UK's real-time gross settlement service. So this is where it all starts to become real. Bank of England literally tested Ripple's tech back in 2017, I want to say. 2017. I'm going to say this was 2017. Yep, 2017. Okay? They basically put this tech through a simulation, right? Two different RTGS systems and two different currencies. And they used Ripple's interledger protocol to make them move in sync. And that's exactly what the BIS is talking about with Project Meridian. Okay? And that's exactly what the Bank of England is talking about when it comes to the the real-time gross settlements moving into ISO 222. So the BIS and the Bank of England are now calling it synchronization in Project Meridian, but they just rebranded the same concept and the same testing that Ripple was already being implemented with them, right? We're going to go to here. It's the same thing they're talking about. Synchronized settlement payments utilizing the interledger protocol. But now they're calling it, again, it's the synchronization from RTGS. And we connected the breadcrumbs back to this proof of concept with Ripple. So this is telling me that Ripple's architecture has been around for years, and it's been quietly influencing the design of the modern financial system. So every time that you hear atomic settlement or real-time gross settlements or real-time cross-border payments or a unified ledger, you're hearing the same exact rebranded words from Ripple's blueprint. Okay? The reason that it sounds familiar is because Ripple built it in the first place. So the Bank of England doesn't need to issue XRP or to become a crypto bank. They need to rely they need to have reliable pipes, right, or plumbing that can connect all these different types of currencies and ledgers in real time. And that's exactly what Ripple's Interledger Protocol is. It's probably one of the few tools that can prove that they could do it scalably and safely. And when those pipes start to move, you're talking about trillions of dollars every single day. And it still needs a bridge asset, which is XRP. XRP will be utilized within the Interledger Protocol when it becomes the most efficient way to provide that instant liquidity between the different currency pairs. So this is why I keep saying that people are chasing these meme coins and these hype coins, but the real evolution is happening within the central bank pilot programs. And Ripple has been sitting in the room for years. They're showing these regulators that they know how to settle across ledgers without breaking the compliance, right? Without breaking the compliance. It could plug straight into the new system that the BIS and the BOE are now deploying. So when people ask, oh my God, no banks are using Ripple, nothing's being adopted, the answer is already there. It's been tested, and we're now starting to watch it roll out with Project Meridian, right? It's been tested in 2017, but now we're starting to watch the testing roll out with Project Meridian. I wonder if there's a date for this. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. The only difference is that Ripple did it with crypto in mind, and the Bank of England and the Bank of International Settlements are adopting it for global infrastructure. So regardless, the plumbing, the infrastructure, the design has been around since 2017.
Work and any other insights you might have for how that work can be used going forward.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Different hat, same room. I've been here before, and it's a pleasure to be back today. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bretton Woods Working Group on cross-border payments. And as we've heard here earlier, it's an old issue. I lived with this issue for many years, and it's been on the agenda too many times actually in the past. And a good example, as we heard, is the G20 roadmap on cross-border payments. And I do think that if we talk about this in general terms, most people agree that we need to speed up cross-border payments, and we also need cross-currency payments, and we need to make them cheaper, and we need to make them faster. So no problem there. The hard part is to go from general statements to actually getting things done. And to do this, we need cooperation, we need standardization, and we also actually need a sense of urgency and a willingness to get things done. And here, I think that the Bretton Woods Committee paper is a very, very nice summary of where we stand and what the choices are when it comes to achieving this and to achieving what I call transactional efficiency. Because if that is not there, then eventually people start using somebody else's money at the end of the day. And the conclusion of the committee was in this nice little piece of paper was that there is actually a premium on getting things done now. And it's not really harder than that, or at least in the near future. And to this end, we came down on the side of Project Nexus, which has been mentioned by many earlier today and also yesterday. And here, interoperability is, of course, absolutely necessary in order to make this work. This in no way at all diminishes the need to work on tokenization, the Finternet, or whatever other new niceties that are around the corner, and that's Project Agorá and a bunch of other projects. But based on what happens in reality, I would say the following. To move things, it's actually better to build a Fiat 127 than to aim for a Rolls Royce, because that actually ensures that it gets done. And this is why the committee came down in support of Agorá, because that it sounds more doable in the short run compared to doing something which is fancy. And if that proved to be wrong in the future, then we do the next system and the next system. So that's not a problem as such.
Okay. So what he said there, was that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? What he's saying is that if you want to build something on a global scale that's a fully tokenized system, right? It's so complex that it's better off to have something that's a little bit of an easier project that they can actually complete than to start something that they can't actually complete. And he made the analogy of, I don't even know what car he said, the Fiat and a Rolls Royce. So he's saying let's focus on the pilots, the projects, and the integrations that we've already been doing for the cross-border payments, which is Project Nexus, right? He wants to get Project Nexus done. And then after that runs and that's up and that's live and they figured it out, then they're going to run into that bigger idea, which is the tokenized money, the unified ledgers, and all of that in the background is exactly what Project Agorá is. So we're going to jump into the Bretton Woods Committee. And this was written by some real big names, right? You got the Federal Reserve Bank of New York here, Columbia University, former governor, Columbia University, Singapore, Inter-American Development Bank, the Liquidity and Sustainability Facility, Deutsche. So in here, it is a dual strategy to transform cross-border payments, and this was from the Bretton Woods Committee. Now, this is exactly what the gentleman said in the video. Two competing paths are evaluated. One is for further development of national instant payment systems. They're calling this IPS, instant payment systems, and interlinking them together. And two, a new global regime in which tokenization would digitally represent financial assets on a unified ledger. The second regime would enable instantaneous settlements and allow smart contracts to be embedded in the tokenized systems. So what the Bretton Woods Committee is basically saying is we have two roads that we can go down. One of them is to connect what already exists, which is Project Nexus. And the other is the transformation. It's the infrastructure, right? They want to build the tokenized systems. That's Project Agorá. And they're basically saying that both paths can run together. They can work together. But they need working results right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. They need it done now. And Project Nexus is basically saying that they want the cross-border payments to be done in seconds, okay? And that's the standard that people are kind of demanding, right? When you're taking a look at ISDMA, the World Economic Forum, the BIS, the International Monetary Fund, they want these standards. They want instantaneous settlements. And that's exactly what Ripple's network, and the XRP liquidity are built to deliver. So this, I'm going to try to connect this to why this is important as a Ripple investor, right? This committee did not pick tokenization first, okay? They picked Nexus. Why? It's because they want to go with something that's already working. And when it does, it becomes the standard for everything else that will follow it. So once Nexus runs successfully across all different types of systems, then the tokenization becomes the next upgrade, okay? And what Ripple is giving is basically a strategy to both sides of this argument. The IPS as well as the tokenization. RippleNet is already working with multiple systems. They're connecting existing payment systems with bridges and liquidity. Okay? And the interledger protocol and on-demand liquidity are basically the foundation for the unified ledger future. Ripple doesn't have to pivot to accommodate this because it already built both of these pain points. Now, Ripple, we know that Ripple's already aligned with ISO 222 financial standard messaging. It's already compatible with the upgraded rails, Bank of England, the BIS, and all the other ones, the International Monetary Funds, all the other ones that they're already deploying. Ripple is already aligned with the new standards. So when a system under Nexus needs to be plugged into the unified ledger, Ripple can already be that on and off ramp, and all of the, not all the others, but many other blockchains would have to start to build backwards to try to integrate in with this architecture. But Ripple had already complied with this architecture from Jump Street. Now, Ripple, we already know that Ripple's been working with central banks, financial institutions, in many different pilots. And essentially what they're looking for is that synchronization settlement across distributed ledgers. Now, it could be something else, but for me, I think that I want to give Ripple the credit, because when the committee says they're going to start simple and scale later, Ripple is already ready to be that plumbing. It's invisible to maybe the users of the central bankers, but essentially behind the scenes, Ripple is the one that is integrating in and complying with the needs that they already have to address. So Nexus, yeah, they want to focus on Nexus, and Agorá will be the final destination, right? The tokenization of everything that follows that. Ripple is going to be the highway that can handle both of it, Nexus and Agorá. And by the time that the governments are ready to integrate tokenized rails, Ripple is already entrenched and adopted as the bridge for this.